What would happen to the world if they took, everything that Mozart had done and just burned it and, and forgotten about him? I mean, we wouldn't have that legacy, to look back on. And you start cutting out the things that identify who you are and have identified who you are for, 60, 80, 100 years or whatever. You just start, willy-nilly ripping these things out because you don't have a vision to repurpose them. Doesn't mean that it makes it right to take them away.
The Paramount Movie Theater in St. John, New Brunswick was a house of dreams. 2 generations of Maritimers stole their first kiss here, covered their eyes to avoid a Hitchcock horror scene, cried at the heartbreak of their favorite Hollywood idol. Now, at 64 years of age, it sits empty, facing the undignified fate of countless buildings in the city's uptown, death by wrecking ball.
The Paramount Theater was built in 1948, and it was built in the Art Deco style. It was the pride of Atlantic Canada, and people came from everywhere to this theater. It was a beautiful, beautiful building in its time. And when they built theaters back then, it was about the event. So when you walk through the doors and you ascend the stairs into the lobby and the beautiful sconce work, and then you walk into the grand room here where I am, and it's just, huge, tall, rolling plaster walls and the attention to detail. And it was a palace, and it was one of those buildings that when you walked in, you knew you were going to an event. And that's what makes this place unique.
A night at the Paramount was a rare treat for Michael McDonald, the son of a single mom who had to work hard to make ends meet. Now that he's 46, the theater has become something more. It represents a time when his city had a heartstring firmly tied to Hollywood, when former St. Johner Louis B. Mayer was building MGM into one of the biggest movie production companies in the world, and when Paramount Pictures built hundreds of these theaters across North America.
My name is Michael McDonald. I'm a father, and I got 2 kids, and I work at the St. John Regional Hospital in acute care. And I've been doing that for about 3 years. I'm a musician and an artist and a bit of a right-brain guy. I'm an urban boy. I mean, I was born and raised in the uptown, and I lived about 6 blocks from here. And the big thing on Saturdays in the early 70s was B films. The city was just alive with parents dropping off kids, and there'd be 500 kids in a lineup down around the corner to see a movie here, and there'd be 500 kids across the street at the cinema to see a triple feature. So there's 1,000 kids in the uptown, and I just remember how vivacious this uptown used to be back in those days, and it's fallen by the wayside quite a bit. The King Square area was sort of the cultural center of the uptown, and it's slowly fallen into some decay.
The Paramount has been sitting empty for a decade. Mike McDonald yearns to give it a new life. He envisions a combination of a live performing arts space, an independent cinema, and a cafe. He must rally the community to raise enough money to make his dream a reality.
These buildings are the buildings that attract people, and there's a need for it. We need a venue like this. We don't have one. This building is as a 450-seat live venue would be the perfect match. So, I see pouring my energies into this is to bring the city, to start to bring the city back to its cultural vibrancy that it used to be, but it also serves a really strong purpose in being a place for the city's citizens to celebrate their own art and culture.
The city of St. John is the oldest incorporated city in the country. Blessed with a deep harbor, it was once the busiest port on the eastern seaboard, second only to New York City. The prosperity from shipping, trade, and manufacturing was reflected on the architectural face of the city. In 1877, the Great St. John Fire destroyed overnight what had taken centuries to build. But the city rebounded. In fact, it flourished during the war years. The influx of soldiers brought life to the entertainment district uptown. The city became one of the architectural showpieces of the Atlantic provinces. Since the Great Fire, St. John has had up to 15 operating theaters. Today, the Kent, the Imperial, the Lyric, and the Paramount, now named after the square it overlooks, are the only survivors.
The heritage stock that we have in St. John is unequal in Canada. The area focused around King Square actually has a representative building of every architectural period in the historic development of St. John.
Some of St. John's architectural gems still stand. Some have been renovated or put to other use, but many have been displaced by parking lots. Except for photographs, there are no traces of once grand structures such as the Customs House, Union Station, the General Hospital, the MRA department store, or the Royal Hotel.
We continue to lose those. We continue to lose the opportunity for a rich, vibrant cultural and social life that will attract people to come, live, work, and play, and have a high quality of life in the city of St. John.
With support from members of the uptown community, McDonald's determination grows. But he doesn't have much time, months, maybe only weeks. Desperate to get people to join in his quest, he turns to a group of filmmakers for support.
I was on a shoot one day in St. John in the summer, and Mike just walked past the shoot, and we started just talking, and he's like, I want to do something for the event. I want to make some kind of video. I want to show people the inside of the building. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, we had organized it, and we had got inside the building and shot the promo video, which would go on to show at the Night for the Paramount event.
MacDonald premieres the Paramount film at a fundraiser. Tonight will be a major test of community support.
This is like a referendum. This is, to me, this is like, the fate of a building is at stake here, and the barometer is whether people come to this event. It means that we can move forward. If no one comes, then it could mean the end of an Art Deco building. So, a really important part of our art and culture infrastructure is at stake tonight. So I'm nervous, yeah.
Blow us away. Normally you wait for the drum solo at the end. Tonight we're going to start with a real big bang. So let's hear it for Johnny Morrison!
We're at the Kent Theater, which is the Chinese Cultural Center. This is an event that we're holding called A Night for the Paramount. It is for all the marbles. It's a public engagement event. We have 5 musical acts going to play. We're raising money to try and keep the building afloat, and everything's at stake. If people come, we continue. If we pack this place, we continue. If no one shows up, there's a real good chance that this building's going to get bulldozed and become a parking lot. Buildings that define us, we got to keep them. So tonight is the night that we find out whether the public cares for the Paramount.
The Paramount Theater is something that, has been part of my past. Went to many movies, and not only movies, but concerts. And it had a big stage, and you knew when you were going to the Paramount, you were going there for something special.
I'd hate to see a parking lot be put at Paramount because I've had so many memories of being there.
If they tore it down, I imagine they'd probably just turn it into parking, surface parking, and I think that would add to an image of deterioration that we really try to prevent in the Uptown.
Anyway, you know what? I just wanted to talk about, just for 1 second, about how important it is to me that you guys all came out and supported this. It really gives me high hopes that we can continue to bring this building out of the shadows that it's been in for far too long. And give yourselves a round of applause, people. You're saving a theater tonight.
Last thing I want to do to demolish the building. Because the publicity, because not too many buildings left, additional buildings left on that block.
The Paramount is currently owned by Paul Darris, a local real estate developer. He also owned another landmark theater on King Square, the Strand Odeon Cinema. Before he demolished it, the Strand was Canada's oldest operating cinema. It is now a parking lot. The city of St. John is in transition. A largely industrial city, there's growing interest in the Uptown from high-tech companies and the cultural sector. But hopes of an urban renaissance have been dashed before. First by the recession. Then, 2 years ago, a major blow. A huge oil refinery project was suddenly canceled. A group promoting Uptown St. John has been paying the monthly expenses to the owner of the Paramount, but a buyer has yet to come forward. The Uptown St. John board can't cover the costs forever.
Yeah, I think the owner, he's made his reputation on demolishing buildings for parking lots, so it's not an idle threat. He's done the same thing on a theater on one of the other sides of the square. So it's not like it's an idle threat. This could really happen, and it may happen. But at the same time, he really doesn't want to tear it down. He wants to see it reused and repurposed so that there is more vitality in the uptown area. He actually does have a heart for the uptown as well.
The property is was hoping for development for last 6-7 years, but no tenants. If in the near future, if we didn't find anybody to develop to rent it, or I'll sell it to somebody's interested for development. If that don't take place, then we're gonna have to put a rockaball to it.
While the demolition deadline looms, the Paramount video goes viral. MacDonald discovers he's not alone in his quest. Soon after, he meets Harold Wright, St. John's heritage guru. The more Wright teaches him about the legacy of the Paramount, the more he realizes this theater must be saved.
We're sort of lucky that as a researcher, historians, when you look at this stuff, it helps piece together the story. Now, this is one of my favorite. You can see here the building.
There's the old marquee.
Marquee on there. We've got the Bank of Nova Scotia busy. We have next to that Kelps. This is just outstanding. The lobby.
Look at that lobby.
Now this is the 1950s lobby, but the beauty is, that really, other than the carpeting and paint color, it's still intact. This is the interior opening. Wow. This is 1948, but this shows the lower auditorium with over 600 seats, the original paint scheme, the scroll plasterwork, all still there.
We've got probably about a month before a decision comes down whether they're going to tear this building down or not.
It's reflective of what I call the 1950s, 60s, 70s mentality of developing communities by destroying the community. We literally have torn down, demolished hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of buildings. Some are iconic buildings like the Customs House and the Union Station. Some of them are residences. And then there is the Strand Odeon. When that closed, it was the oldest operating cinema in Canada. And again, it's now a parking lot.
Many St. Johners support MacDonald's goal to save the old theatre, but there are doubters. Some business people feel his vision is impractical. Some members of the arts community worry the theatre will compete with existing venues. Still others are put off by his zeal.
Mike MacDonald is a big personality and fabulous to be around. I do enjoy Mike, and I would run into him in town. I remember once I was at Starbucks just hanging out waiting for my next meeting, and there he was writing his daily letter to the Premier of New Brunswick to ask to save this Paramount Theater. So, you know what? Admirable, that passion. The challenge when you have one person who believes so passionately, they become singular in their vision. And it's very difficult for others to participate in that vision and perhaps to help shape it. I think it's called the founder's syndrome. And so you see this in startup companies, you see this in all sorts of enterprises that begin from someone's singular passion.
When you're one person saying this, a lot of people are gonna say, oh, that can't be done, it can't be done. But I'm gonna do this anyway. I'm gonna go to the wall and see, how far I can get. So that's what this journey is all about. It's about one guy trying to raise a group of people to see the importance of bringing back an iconic art and culture building like this and repurposing it.
MacDonald drops everything, takes a leave from work, and sets out on what will become a pilgrimage. His trek starts just across the border in Bangor, Maine. He he will fly halfway across the United States to meet with fellow crusaders, people like him committed to resisting the relentless urban development threatening many of North America's heritage cultural spaces.
Well, Cain, won't you come on down? Or wash the blood clean from your hands. Can the cool water wake us from this dream? Cain, won't you come on in?
I found a lady in Chicago. Her name is Maureen Sullivan, and she is doing the same thing that I'm trying to do in St. John, New Brunswick. She's trying to save a theater. The whole Chicago trip is to get down there and find out, what the consensus is with the public about bringing these buildings back. And I believe that Maureen shares the same philosophy as me. Like I said, bringing the buildings back, bring vibrancy back to the neighborhoods. So here I am at a motel in Bangor, and I'm flying to Chicago in the morning, so the Windy City.
Mike McDonald strides through the airport, the survival of the Paramount movie theater in his hometown of St. John, New Brunswick, heavy on his mind. The theater's on death row, set to be executed by a demolition crew, unless he can inspire his community to save it. St. John may boast some of the finest heritage buildings in eastern Canada, but McDonald's destined for America's architectural mecca, Chicago, Illinois. McDonald doesn't head for the sophisticated center of the city, but to one of the deteriorating neighborhoods on the south side. He has arranged a rendezvous with Maureen Sullivan. Sullivan is leading the fight to save the Ramova Theater, the last remaining old-style cinema in the area known as South Halsted.
Oh, thank you.
Look at that theater, man.
Yeah, that's 1929 at its finest right there.
Ramova.
Yes. Ramova, it was a Lithuanian theater, and Ramova means peaceful place in Lithuanian.
Sullivan and McDonald are fighting the same fight, just on different battlefields. Maybe she has a strategy for victory.
The theater's been closed since 1986, and people still have an emotional connection to it, whether it be that they went there or their parents have been talking about it their whole lifetime. With some people who are in their teenagers who are excited about the possibilities, and everybody knows it. It's sitting there empty. So it's a mysterious place. The theater opens, not only will it bring more art and culture to the area because we want to make it a performance space, it'll be connected to the schools. And what that's going to do is bring more people, bring foot traffic to Halsted Street, and then people will take a chance on opening these businesses back up. And we can get, coffee houses over here and restaurants and boutiques. And it's going to raise property values here. It's going to bring more tax dollars into the area. All of the economic generator things, the standard classic things like jobs, obviously, which we could use. All of those things will actually come back to this. It's the heart of the neighborhood.
Sullivan sees the rescue of the Ramova as the key to saving her whole neighborhood. A lot of local businesses are counting on her, especially Bernice's Tavern, just down the street.
No, man, the bottle's great.
All right.
This bar is fantastic.
I grew up here, and I'm 50, so I've been here since I was just a little kid. In '75, we moved in. We lived upstairs, and this is where I grew up. Here, when I was a kid, it was really, this strip was happening, between shoe stores and tavern. There was a tavern every 4 doors, for God's sake.
Tell me, what do you think that would happen to this neighborhood if the Ramova came back?
There's a lot of empty storefronts right now. When I was a kid, at the middle of the night, you walk out the door and it was traffic, foot traffic, left and right. What is going on? Foot traffic.
The Paramount is a building that was the heartbeat of this part of town. kind of like the Remova.
That's a good way to put it.
And if the heart is taken away, then the lifeblood stops flowing.
Before you know it, things start happening, businesses start opening.
The neighborhood comes
It's good for
back.
business. Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Maureen connected Mike with her friend and fellow heritage building activist, Jacob Kaplan. Jacob has traveled on Chicago's famed L train for his whole life and has seen a perspective of Chicago from the rails that inspired him to get involved in the fight to save the city's iconic buildings.
We wrote an article a few years ago called Save These Theaters, where we focused on three decaying movie theaters in different neighborhoods of the city, and Remova was one of them. And after that, Maureen basically found us and said, hey, you know, I'm trying to get things started to save this theater. So ever since then, it's been a very good friendship, and we've worked together as much as we can.
What do you think that bringing the Remova back to the area will do?
Well, I mean, it's a business district that had some problems over the years, and I think if you reinvigorate the theater, you know, bring it in and reopen it, I think it would bring a lot of people to the neighborhood, and it would really help spur redevelopment of the area. I think it would really be a good thing. When these sorts of institutions, I mean, you can call them institutions, theaters, you know, close, you know, people have less of a reason to go to a place. So, you know, reopening them really would, I think, bring a lot of people back, and I think it's key, especially with historic buildings, to you know, renovate them, rehab them, keep them up, because they're you know, especially, you know, with the quality of a lot of the construction nowadays, they're becoming more and more rare. I think it's important to preserve what we have and you know, put some life into it.
Growing up, I wanted to be a superhero. On my lawn, I'd pretend to be Spider-Man.
As he saunters through the Chicago Stockyard District, McDonald bumps into another fellow crusader.
So we're standing in the old part of Chicago, and this was the factory district, and it's an unbelievably cool rustic part of Chicago, and we're standing here getting ready to do an interview with me, and I'm hanging with the boys. We're getting set up, and this other guy comes walking towards us, stranger with a beard, looks like Kenny Rogers, and he's got a camera in his hand, and he looks at us, and he goes like this, and I went, anybody that works in the film industry knows that means, are you rolling? And I just thought to myself, this guy works in the film industry. It just so happens that his name's Bob, and he's scouting for a TV show here in Chicago. Bob happens to be a member of the Uptown Preservation Society. Bob's interview, The Divine Intervention, take one. Bob, how you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing, man? This is really, really crazy.
Well, you know, it's funny seeing I see a camera in the middle of this place, and it's like, what are you guys shooting?
Yeah, I know. It's bizarre. Yeah. Can you tell me what the philosophy is about with the Friends of the Uptown and what they want to do?
I think, organically, it's two things. I think the core thing is to save the building because it's so spectacular, and so the passion evolved out of the people who went to the movies there. They want to save it just because it was such a spectacular place. It's like you walked in, you were like, oh, and that was the big movie houses really had that impact. Kind of the secondary thing, and more the thing that actually kind of motivates the engine these days, is the economic development component, where these kind of theaters can actually redevelop a neighborhood. They're the anchor for a neighborhood turning around. And so it's amazing this neighborhood was so vibrant. And then when the theater crashed in the 60s, when it closed up, it kind of led to the demise of the entire neighborhood. And so it's really indicative that how good those theaters are doing is kind of reflective of how these neighborhoods are doing as well. So I think restoring it is going to lead to some very good things for Uptown.
And the theme that's been happening all through this whole day, and since we've been in Chicago, is that everybody is saying, you bring back these buildings, it brings back the neighborhood. You bring back these buildings, it brings back the neighborhood. And it's just over and over and over again. So you know what? You bring back these buildings, it brings back the neighborhood. It's a no-brainer.
McDonald sees his struggle in New Brunswick as part of a larger war between economics and cultural heritage, between practicality and nostalgia. In Chicago, he next meets an activist disturbed about the loss of entertainment landmarks across North America.
If you look at buildings like the Remova or the Paramount, the Remova was built with an arcade beside it of other shops. It's because when people came to the movies, They would buy things on the way in, they would buy things on the way out. They got people out of their homes, into the streets, and into shops where they could do retail purchases. In 1925, on August 18th, the Uptown Theater opened. It was the pinnacle of Balaban and Katz's 7 movie palaces, the first of which began with the Riviera, which is right down the street.
Yeah, beautiful.
The Uptown is the second largest theater built in the United States. Every major rock band, Bruce Springsteen, the Grateful Dead, the Ramones, played the Uptown Theater.
Around the corner from Chicago's Uptown Theater is another of the city's iconic buildings, SNA Studios. This is where Charlie Chaplin made his great films. It's where Gloria Swanson got her start. The hope is it will become a museum celebrating the history of the silent film era.
SNA Studios was one of the first 6 movie production houses and manufacturing facilities. So this space and all the area around it is where films were made. And at that time, films were made with nitrates, which were explosive. And therefore, to protect the films, they were kept in vaults. And many of those films are no longer around because people used to roll them down the street and watch them explode for fun. There's a lot of history here, and being able to both compile that in a way that people can have an opportunity to appreciate it, as well as making it available as a space for people to enjoy.
As night falls, MacDonald's thoughts take a dark turn. What if he fails? What if they all fail? What if the monuments to a once thriving entertainment industry are lost forever to his children and their generation?
Detroit, Michigan is in the Eastern Time.
I'm a little hot because I'm frustrated to a degree where it's like, what do I have to do to get through to the people that this building is an economic engine that's going to revitalize the uptown of St. John, New Brunswick, you know? We are going to lose the Paramount Theater if we don't get off our asses and do something about it. We're never going to get this again. We're never going to get this chance again. Whether it turns into a petting zoo, when it's gone, it's gone.
MacDonald continues his quest to save a heritage movie theater in his hometown. He heads to Canada's capital. He needs to see proof that old cinemas like the Paramount in St. John, New Brunswick can be resurrected.
Through the open window, wispy on the wind, comes the sound of a distant parade. I know if I go out to find it, it will always.
He's greeted by allies, 2 former St. Johners. The Paramount has special meaning for Jonathan and Lindy Van Emberg. This couple first met at the Paramount as teenagers. They've invited MacDonald to show the Save the Paramount video at the restored Mayfair Theater in Centretown. It's one of only 2 independent cinemas left in Ottawa.
I spend a lot of time at the Mayfair Theater here in Ottawa. It's a locally owned private company. Their slogan is, "We show movies that you won't see anywhere else." And it really has this feel that you go in, you're having this experience. Other towns have done this. They have brought their theaters back. They have recreated that feeling. You know, it's no longer a sterile environment you're walking into.
I wander day and night. I am not waiting for anything. I am not in the fight.
We're all the way from St. John, New Brunswick, and you guys are holding an event for our little theater, and we're really, really happy to be here. So I want you to tell me a little bit about this place.
Well, this place was built in 1932 in the Spanish Revival style. We show a lot of cult movies, a little bit of second run, but we're trying to phase it out. Independent films. We show like the Rocky Horror Picture Show every month. That's really fun. We show it every Halloween, and it's huge here.
I've been saying and seeing all throughout these journeys when we were in Chicago, and repeated over and over again when we were interviewing people, that were saying, you know what, these buildings are buildings that define us as a culture, and it's one of those things, like, we're trying to save our theater back home in St. John, New Brunswick, that if you bring the theater back, you put a certain lifeblood back into the neighborhood, and then there's, like, you know, peripheral spin-offs from that.
We've heard a lot from the neighboring pubs and restaurants that say, you know, oh, when you guys have a good night, it brings in so many customers for us, and we have sort of an old-fashioned neighborhood that we're in, and they've been pretty resistant to change. They like the old theater, and we've actually been hosting fundraisers to help fight a new project. They want to build a multiplex literally almost across the street from us, and we've been kind of hosting the neighborhood resistance.
A lot of cities, like my city, there's an area on the east side of town where it's just big box stores, and it seems to suck people right out of the municipality.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't find the money right now in these depressed economic times to save our theater, at least we can possibly raise the movement to a more national story level, where people will stop and take a look at what defines them in the buildings and their cultural centers.
The Paramount Theater was built in 1948, and it was built in the Art Deco style. It was the pride of Atlantic Canada, and people came from everywhere to this theater. It was a beautiful, beautiful building in its time. And when they built theaters back then, it was about 8 minutes.
And we got to screen some movies, and it's a beautiful theater, and we raised $1,000. So dollar by dollar, brother. We're on the plane now. We're heading to Los Angeles, and we're going to show the movies there. We're going to show the Paramount, another film that we were invited to show. This is fast becoming an awareness campaign to teach people about the importance of keeping their iconic buildings, and it's become a lesson in art and culture infrastructure rescue and art and culture economies and stuff like that, and teaching people about the importance of having a solidified art and culture economy.
From the capital of Canada to the center of the North American movie industry, there used to be more than 300 movie theaters in Los Angeles. Even in the land of palm trees and movie stars, it seems the lives of cultural property can be cheap. The Save the Paramount short film has caught the attention of a group in Santa Monica. McDonald is invited to show his film at the Lamley Monica Theater.
The Save the Paramount clip is the call to action video that we use to try and raise awareness. So thank you very much for having us here today, and I love your little California here. I may not get back on the plane.
Inside the ornament,
I think that all these buildings they become empowered, they become powerful to us in communities because of the energy that's been placed over time. The more time we give them, the more energy we give them, the more they resonate back for us. So when a building becomes historically significant at 50 years old, what's happened in 50 years that's made it historically significant?
Warren Sonoda is an accomplished film director living in Los Angeles. Mike met him a few years ago when Warren was shooting a music video in St. John. Warren knows the city and the Paramount Theater well, and as a filmmaker, has vested interest in cinemas.
You need an anchor for every neighborhood. My city is Toronto, and I think of Queen West. I don't know if you know Queen West very well, but they opened a hotel called the Drake. They spent a lot of money on this really kind of tiny boutique hotel. It was I think it was a halfway house or something. And some people thought, well, what? That's weird. That's like kind of not a great neighborhood at the time. But when they opened the Drake, it became culturally an anchor for that part of town, and it revived that entire area. And I'm not talking just revive it. It's created an entire art gallery section of Queen West that never was there before. If you have schools, if you have hospitals, and you're healthy, and you have an economy that's trying to get back on its feet, you have to nurture it with something more than just the bare necessities. You have to give it life. You have to give it culture. You have to give it stories of themselves that they can see. And I think those movie houses, like the Paramount, are those types of places.
McDonald has dinner with Cayman Grant, a former St. Johnner. Against all odds, Grant has established herself in LA as an actress and filmmaker.
You know, advice I'd give is create the foundation for people to have dreams. I was able to dream, and I think that if you take away the support of arts and culture, you're taking away dreams of young people and things that they could do and they could be better at. People told me that, oh, you can't go to LA, you can't do this, you can't, everything was you can't, but it should be you can, and people need to think broader, Arts and culture in general, that gives people the, ability to dream that they can be whatever they want to be.
Before he leaves California, MacDonald meets with an urban designer. Roger Sherman specializes in reinventing old spaces, but he raises doubts in MacDonald's mind. The Paramount will cost more than $3.5 million to renovate. Could it be his dream is just too big for a small city in the East?
An art and culture economy is something that is valid and is something that can change a municipality?
It is, but the problem with so many cities is that it's a chicken and egg problem. Our preservationist community doesn't get it. They think that wouldn't it be great to have this done, but they're not concerned with the fact that the owners actually have to make money. It's not enough simply to have a cultural resource.
They don't have the hook.
There's no hook. Everybody likes to see a theater come back. It's a great comeback story, but nobody's risking the liability that the owner is, or whoever it is who's putting the money in, to have to do that, who actually has to think about how they're actually going to pay for it all.
Well, Roger's an amazing guy, and he talked about a lot of things about renewal and the importance of these buildings, but the one thing that he said to me, he said, it's easy to say you want to renovate a building. He says, but if you don't have the populace to support something like that, you have to find a way. There needs to be a hook that keeps the building going and injects people into the uptown. The problem is we need the money to renovate the building, but we also need the population that's going to sustain it, right? And the whole idea is to make that theater work.
MacDonald travels back across the continent to discover things are worse than when he left. The money keeping the Paramount Theater on life support has run out.
So we just got back, and the building is running out of time. The deadline is very, very soon, and I have no idea what's going to happen.
Mike MacDonald had spread his Save the Paramount message across a continent, but he has to get back to work in the acute care department of the local hospital. His dream of reviving his childhood cinema is dying.
We had an option on the building, our organization did, to purchase it for a certain amount of money for a year. So we paid on that option, which was essentially the expenses for the owner to keep the building standing. And after a year or so, my board, felt that our resources were better utilized elsewhere, where there was potentially more payback in the short term, and that's just the decision that was made for those reasons. These projects are typically 5 to 10 year projects. To raise that kind of money, about $3.6 million. So it's you gotta have a long-term commitment there.
A small group of supporters demonstrates in front of the abandoned theater. Their hope is to raise enough to at least purchase the building until it can be improved.
Today is a little bit of a peaceful protest or a call of action from all our local musicians. We've been playing since 10 this morning, and I think this is going to go probably well into the afternoon. So we have a goal of raising $650,000. We have pledge sheets being signed, and it's basically a do or die kind of time right now. We have maybe about a week left.
I thought of how much I care about this campaign, and yet I can't really seem to find the money to donate to something that's not guaranteed to go through. But if we could find a way to only only give if the project is successful, then we have a winner. So if we reach the total amount, we'll call the pledges in, and everyone can have ownership of being a part of it, the success of the project.
Flattery is almost always followed by a refusal.
I'm really cynical right now because I don't see any light for this building, but it's darkest before the dawn. Who knows what could happen? But my sadness is that we are going to be in St. John a lesson for the rest of Canada and the rest of North America of what not to do.
$650,000 to buy the building, millions more to return it to its former glory. In a city of about 100,000 residents, it's going to take much more than singing and wishing.
When we released the video, that the video stated what the theater was going to be used for and what St. John thought the theater was going to be used for. But it wasn't what St. John thought the theater should be used for. It was what a very small group of people thought the theater should be used for.
It was not so much who stood behind that project as who did not. And you did not see the support of anyone who ran a performance arts company or was a venue.
It's an eerie echo of the Great Fire that decimated uptown St. John more than a century ago. In April, a fire is deliberately set in an abandoned building. It spreads to the Lyric Theater, a grand silent film house around the corner from the Paramount. There's no saving it. Three stories of history are clawed to the ground. McDonald's vision of a renewed theater district seems to be crumbling too.
So I went on Twitter and I saw the feed, and it just said that a massive fire broke out at 3 o'clock in the morning and the whole building was destroyed. So the whole sort of dream of having the Lyric Theater as a part of that whole concept and that dream of having a theater district in the uptown is now, as you see, being torn down because the building is burned so hot and it's so structurally unsound now that they have to bring it down. It's very disappointing and very disheartening. This is a very sad day for the city.
I'm hoping that what happens here today will remind people of really what we have and what the potential of it is, and I'm hoping that we've sort of reached a stage in the evolution of the Paramount project where we're wobbling a bit, and there's a bit of uncertainty as to whether the community has the will to carry on. But I'm hoping that perhaps if anything good might come out of this loss today, that it might motivate the community to revisit the idea, maybe put a little more energy and support behind it, and still make that happen. So I think if anything good may come today, it may be that the community may refocus its concern and its effort and energy to save the Paramount.
The Paramount is in limbo now. A really big entity has stepped away, one that supported me in my efforts to raise awareness. So now the Paramount Theater is basically now back to being a grassroots movement.
The loss of the Lyric Theater seems a premonition for Mike MacDonald, a premonition of the death of his beloved Paramount. He's been fighting to salvage it for more than 2 years. The empty lot where the Lyric used to stand is evidence of how modern city life takes a toll on vulnerable old architecture, and of the greater toll it can take on one man trying to hold on to the cultural icons of his youth in a fast-changing world.
2.5 years ago, I started this project by myself. I was hopeful that it was going to be something great. I thought for sure that, that we could have the wherewithal to make this happen. I'm back to being a grassroots movement of one again. I don't have any regrets. I learned a ton. but I think that it's a huge missed opportunity, and it'll always have this little bit of a pang in me. I was really hopeful for the Paramount, and I was really thinking that, our art and culture community were going to come behind this, and the city itself, the people itself would remember what this place was like when this place was happening, and when the Odeon was happening in this square. What a cultural, what a cultural place that it was. It's taken a bit of a toll on me as far as having any faith in anything big art and culturally happening, in the city. And I don't mean that in a negative way, because there's a lot of great art and culture going on in this city by various groups that are doing a phenomenal job. It put me through the ringer a little bit, and I kind of don't know where I am now as far as my city is concerned, and I don't know if I still have the same zeal for the art and culture scene around here. I kind of feel like I'm behind a huge pane of glass now, just sort of looking in.